Hi everyone, welcome to another quick session. In this session, we will discuss about Kerberos, what Kerberos is, and we will also try to understand all the steps, how it works, and also the security related questions which you might see in the CISSP exam. So, I will try my best to explain you in a very simple way. Thus, you could have a very good understanding because when you explore about this topic on the internet, you may see a lot of confusion around this topic. So, let's try to understand what Kerberos is. So, Kerberos is a centralized symmetric key ticket based authentication protocol that provides secure single sign on without transmitting a password over the network. So we will understand thoroughly what does it mean without transmitting password over the network, right? So the important point is what we need to understand it is a single sign-on protocol. It provides secure single sign-on. It is a Kerberos is a centralized ticket-based authentication protocol. So now let's focus on this diagram, the flow. So that will help you to understand uh, about Kerberos in detail. So now, first thing, for instance, if we talk about the core component, so architecture, so key distribution center, which is over here. So that is key. So let me change the color first. I think because the background color is black. Okay, so key distribution center, right? So that is a key distribution center. We also call it KDC. So key distribution center KDC, the trusted authority in Kerberos. So the KDC, key distribution center, consists of authentication server, this one, which authenticates the user. Will discuss it thoroughly. And this is ticket granting server. So two important components: authentication server, which authenticates user, and ticket granting server. It issues service tickets. So authentication server plus ticket granting servers are logical component of the KDC. So these are the logical components of the KDC. So key distribution center. So now in window environment, very important for CISSP exams. So domain controller runs Active Directory, identity database, and uh, uh, Active Directory means identity database, and Kerberos KDC AS plus TGS, right? So Active Directory stores username, as we all know, username, password hashes, service accounts, Kerberos keys. So Kerberos enabled service, this one. So that is a service that can accept Kerberos service tickets, decrypt them, and using it on secret key, right? So service that can accept Kerberos service tickets. So those tickets which are issued by key distribution center, so they are accepted by they accept Kerberos enabled server accept Kerberos service ticket, decrypt them, and using its own secret key. So example, file server, email server, database, internal web app, Linux server, SSH, and NFS, for instance, for the storage. NFS port, as we all know, that is for storage. So Kerberos enabled service do not run on KDC. So Kerberos enabled services are do not run on the KDC. So they run on a separate server. So Kerberos has two important components, AS and TGS, right? And also on top of that, uh, it has identity database. We can also call it Kerberos database. Just let me put it here just for the understanding. So that is a database. We can say Kerberos database, right? Where we have all the user related information, username, passwords, right? So now the the first thing which we need to understand, admin creates users in this database, or we can call it an active directory, and this active directory stored that this database store username and also password hash, and this happens before authentication. So you create your username and password, right? You register yourself, or it is created by the user in active directory, right? So that is, in fact, that is always in the database user or in active directory. So now here the step one, now let's focus on the flow. So here the user enters username and password, right? While accessing this window, user enters username plus password, right? And one more important thing which we need to know, that this Kerberos, when you are entering your username and password on the window, so this Kerberos client is built into OS. So this is Kerberos client is built in or into OS. If that Kerberos client is not built into OS, then this entire authentication, entire this protocol will not work. So we need Kerberos client on OS, on operating system. So it keeps password locally, right? When you enter username and password, and the password will be kept locally, uh, and it drives a cryptographic key from it. So when you enter username and password is never sent, right? So this is important thing which we need to understand. User logs in, user enters username and password, and then this client, Kerberos client, will ask this first step. Client only sends the username to authenticate, user authenticate with AS and TGT request. So user authenticates with AS. This is authentication server, right? Okay. So what user does, this Kerberos client, the step number one, user authenticates with AS and ask for the TGT request. What TGT is? Ticket granting uh, ticket, right? So what it includes, this particular request, what client sends? Client only sends the user name, identity, no password. That is important. So password is never sent over the network. So password is kept locally on the client. So it only sends a username in this first step, in this flow. User authenticates with AS, so it will never send password. It will only send user name for the identity purpose. So request for ticket granting ticket, right? So it is client is requesting for uh, ticket granting ticket along with the username, only user, no password hash. Now the next step would be that AS client, this authentication server looks up password hash in AD, right? So what authentication server will do, it will check against that identity, that username identity, the password hash in the AD, or let's say Kerberos database, whatever it is, just for the understanding purpose. It will check in the database uh, against this username, the password which is already stored in this database in hashed, right? And now another important thing which we need to know, drives same password key. It looks up password hash in AD in the database, right, against that username which client has sent, and then it drives same password based key, generates session key, and plus TG uh, and sends a session key, right, and also uh, sends TGT. So it the session key is generate which is driven by same password based key. It generates session key along with TGT. So TGT is encrypted. TGT is encrypted with TGS key. So TGS, ticket granting server, has its own mechanism to encrypt this TGT. So once again, AS sends session key encrypted with AS session authentication server sends session key encrypted with the password derived key. So the password which is kept in which is already in the database against that username, right? So uh, just one thing we need to understand, the session key encrypted with the password derived key. So that's enough for the CISSP exam. How it is internally done, that do not need to understand. The important thing is the session key is encrypted with the password derived key, right? So the password which is already in the database base against that username. So TGT encrypted, and TGT is encrypted with the TGS key, right? So TGT. So what it does, it checks username against the password which is already stored in Active Directory in the database. And the step number two, it sends a session key which is encrypted with a session key which is encrypted with the password derived key. And along with that, TGT encrypted with the TGS key. So now client will receive TGT, encrypted TGT. So client can decrypt only session key. This client can decrypt only session key. Client cannot decrypt the TGT, right? So if this client, because client has password which is locally stored, right? If this client has the right or correct password which is already stored in the database, right, while registering when the user is initially registered, it has password, the username, and if this client has the right, has the correct, has the appropriate, has a appropriate password or the correct password, then client would be able to decrypt only the session key, because the session key is encrypted with the password drive key. So the same password which is in the database, right, in hash form, and the password while the password which a client has when user has entered username and password. So passwords, one side password is in the database, and other side the password is in the client, on the client side. So the catch is that the password is never sent over the network. So that is important. So client cannot decrypt the TGT, only can decrypt session key. Now the step number 4, step number 3, Kerberos client Kerberos client automatically decrypts session key, right? If decryption succeed, authentication is proven. Before step 3. So yeah, once it has the client has the right password, which is stored in the database, and if client is able to decrypt it, right, then that means authentication is proven. Authentication happens implicitly. Now the third step would be that client sends TGS. Client sends client sends TGT. Sorry. Now client request access from TGS. So client sends TGT authenticator timestamp encrypted with the session key. Client sends TGT authenticator timestamp with the uh, session key. So what TGS, client service ticket, TGS ticket granting server, what it does, it validates TGT, right? So the TGT cannot be decrypted on the client because client does not have key. Client request access from TGS, so it sends its TGT ticket, right? Which is then, if that TGT ticket is legitimate, it can be, decrypted with the TGS can decrypt it, because initially the same ticket with encryption was sent to the client, right? So when you client send that ticket, TGS validates TGT and issues service ticket. So here in fourth, TGS provides a service ticket and session key, another new session key. So if the TGT ticket is decrypted, valid ticket, then the TGS will issue the service ticket encrypted with the service key. So new session key, right? Now the seventh step, not, and then the next step would be the client. Now client sends service ticket, which is issued by TGS, and sends service ticket to um, Kerberos enable server. So this might run in another server. Usually it runs on another server. So client sends service ticket authenticator. Service decrypts that ticket, verifies identity, opens secure a session, and access is granted. Right? Then access is granted. So this is whole workflow which we need to understand for the CISSP exam. Now, if we quickly wrap it up, then user authentication with AS TGT request then then AS sends, authentication server sends TGT and session key, right? If But password is never sent over the network, so password is stored in Active Directory database, right? Kerberos database we can also say, and uh, and if the username has the right password, then a client can decrypt it, right? Everything happens in the background, so user does not need to do anything. So if client Kerberos is installed on the window on the OS, right? So it happens in the background, so user does not need to do anything here, right? So then the ticket is TGT is issued, and it is encrypted with TGS. Again, client will send that TGT to TGS. TGS will decrypt it and will see whether it is a legitimate ticket. Then it will issue service ticket along with the session key, completely new session key, and it sends, then client sends service ticket to the Kerberos enable service, which might run another server, and then it issues, then access is granted, verifies service ticket, and opens the session, then access is granted. So now some more key points which are important for the CISSP exam. What Kerberos provides security benefits: password protection, password never transmitted, as we have discussed thoroughly in this session. Prevent password sniffing, because if you do not send password over the internet, over the network, so that cannot be sniffed, right? So password is kept locally. Replay attack protection uses timestamps authentication. They are short-lived tickets, right? Capture tickets cannot be used indefinitely. So client and key distribution center, so they should be synchronized, the time should be synchronized. So client verifies server verifies client, so mutual authentication happens, so prevents fake servers attacks, right? So single sign-on authenticate once, access multiple services, no repeated password entry. Single sign-on, as we all know, that one password can be used for multiple services. Centralized authentication services do not handle password, right? So passwords are not handled by services. Reduced attack service, easier security management. So what Kerberos does not do: exam traps, does not transmit password. So that could be exam trap. So they might ask whether Kerberos in Kerberos passwords are sent over the network. So that is important to know, that does not transmit passwords, does not perform authorization right, does not use public key. Crypto by default does not work without time synchronization. Timestamp, synchronization is important. We should have we should have NTP server, right? So the time is properly synced. Authorization is enforced by file servers, applications, or back role based access control operating systems. So critical security dependencies, very important. Time synchronization. Kerberos relies on timestamp. Clock must be synchronized, right? Plus minus 5 minute uses NTP, as we discussed. So if time is not properly synchronized, then authentication will fail. KDC is a single point of trust. If it compromises entire domain, could compromise. So golden ticket attacks target the KDC ticket. So Kerberos, once again, Kerberos is a centralized ticket-based authentication provider protocol that provides secure, single sign-on, symmetric, cryptographic timestamps, and trusted key distribution carrier without passwords. So I have repeated this multiple times, that passwords are not transmitted over the network, right? So short memory hooks, KDC is equal to AS, the essential component on KD, key distribution center. AS, TGS, authenticate once, ticket everywhere. If you can decrypt it, if you can decrypt it, then you know the password, right? So you have the right password. Ticket plus time plus trust, right? So Active Directory, um, it is identity store, as we all know, that user credentials are kept in Active Directory. Kerberos KDC authentication server and ticket granting server. So I think we have covered this topic very thoroughly. I hope I would be able to explain about this topic and all the small points which are really important for the CISSP exam. If you have any feedback or question, please share in the feedback section. Thank you so much for watching this video.